Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode in Color Theory exploring oils. We want to see what's going to happen with a range of blues. Now we did this already with the reds. That yielded some interesting results. We're going to try some of the same mixing colors here. We're going to try the titanium white, that brilliant yellow pale from Williamsburg. We're going to try basically the faux cadmium yellow light, but we're going to try this one right here. Now, we talked about these pigment numbers. So look at this, the pigment yellow 65. Well, guess what we see here? Pigment yellow 65. So these two are identical. And I thought, well, why don't we just see? Again, that's the faux cadmium yellow there. Let's see what happens with that. Now, instead of using the phthalo green like we used over here, we are going to add one other one, and this is the yellow ochre. We're sort of trying to get a twofer out of this because in some ways this was about exploring reds, but there was a lot of oranges in here. Well, as you can see, there's going to be a lot of greens happening here because all of these are going to hit these. And what do we not have a lot of? We basically have, I think, phthalo green, olive green, and this barite green. There's only 4 greens I think that I know of that I even have. And that's because, well, we can make so many greens. We've got, I think we're going to start off with cerulean blue, then we move to cobalt, then to French ultramarine. Then we start getting to the darker stuff. Phthalo blue, this is probably the most intense of all the colors we're going to have. Then there's these two side by side, and you'll get to see, even here on the, well, this is really not the best indicator, but you can see how that's greenish and this is more reddish. So we're going to, this is almost going to be more like a purple gray. This is almost going to be more like a deep blue gray. So we want to try these two. And again, we are going to, this is the easiest way to kind of see what they're like when you just cut them with the white like this. But then we'll just kind of with progressively darker things. I think the yellow ochre is going to be on the bottom here, like we did with these swatches. Now, as always, we got to have a whole bunch of these brushes, and it will get a little bit messy here. I'm hoping that what I learned from the last time will make that maybe not be quite the case. None of these are cadmiums, so we don't have to worry about anything like that, because again, these are faux cadmium. These aren't the real things. I mean, there's linseed oil, safflower oil, but you don't see any warning signs about any cadmium stuff there. And we are going to do our usual thing here, our 5 colors that we're going to do, and our 7 like this. And I do believe they're almost all Winsor Newton, except for a couple of Williamsburg. It just played out that way. That's not intentional. Again, it's not like Gamlin is bad or any of these other ones are bad. It just happened to work out that way. I had a few more Gamlins and Williamsburg, other colors besides the, oh, actually, we do have, speaking of blues, we do have this blue-gray right here. Maybe we'll add this one to it. I will see. It kind of depends on how long this video goes. I kind of forgot all about this one because, yeah, it's such a new thing. Now, the other reason I might not do it is because I don't have a whole bunch of this. This was an expensive thing, and this takes up an awful lot of paint here. So we may not, that's another reason why I think I may exclude this one. So I think we got enough to work with here. That's 6 and 5. So we got a lot of color combos that are going to happen here. We're going to get to cerulean blue next. Let's begin with our cerulean blue here. And I'm hoping that this little layout that I've got means I won't mix up the colors like I did on the other swatch, or the reds, when I kind of transpose the cadmium yellow light and the cadmium yellow deep. So we are going to do our usual thing here. We are going to take a brush and just kind of start moving this white over to the side best as we can here. Okay, we'll set that aside. We've got a brush here filled with cerulean blue. I adjust a pinch of the thinner here just to make sure that's going to move. Maybe a little more. Now, cerulean blue is not really a color that's going to cover. I'm going to actually take a quick peek. Yeah, see, it's kind of a semi-translucent there. And again, I'm going to try and keep these as flat as I can. We're almost to our white now. And you can see that's not terribly, I don't know, it's not a, what would you say, a color that's very intense. We're not expecting something like a phthalo blue out of this. 1 second here, let me, I just wanted to get some of the paint out of the brush here. We're not trying to make perfect blends out of this. We just want to see, just in general, what's going to happen with this. And that's about what I would expect from cerulean blue here. Mixed with our titanium white. Okay, that's just about, it's kind of the most pure version of, when you see the swatches, say, like on Dick Blake or whatever, you generally see the color crossed over with something like white. It's just the easiest way to see what it is that you have. All right, we're going to try our next one here, which is going to be the Brilliant Yellow Pale, which I don't think it's going to yield a super intense color either. I'm thinking it's going to change once our faux cadmium yellows hit it. Okay, that's a little easier to move there. Time for some of our cerulean blue. Let's see what we get. Wow, that has more of an impact than I thought it would. Oh my goodness. That's a lot more impact than I was expecting. Wow. Interesting. Yeah, that's much more than I thought was going to happen. It's not so much the cerulean blue, as you can see. It's there's a little bit of oomph to that yellow. Look at that. And you see how we're getting a little hint of a green there? So that's kind of neat. Yeah, that I'm good with. I like that. Next up, and this should increase the intensity, is going to be our cadmium yellow. Again, this is our faux cadmium yellow light here. Pull this across. Yeah, sorry about that little drop of the thinner there. Hopefully it doesn't discolor things too much and you can get a decent idea what this is going to look like. This is not the easiest process to film. I'll just, that is one thing for sure. And again, I have to keep grabbing a little bit of thinner here because these colors, obviously these paints have been sitting here a little while and the board itself is really kind of leaching out some of that oil in them. I can already see that changing. I can see, yeah. It's darker than I was expecting, at least in this middle range here. And now we're going to get some of this stuff out of the brush so that the blue doesn't affect too much of the yellow here. Because we like to see an actual mix. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. You know, I could, yeah, I might just put a little bit more of the cadmium yellow over here. Just going to use it, a touch of thinner here. I like that to be a little smoother for you. Again, it's tough on this hot press watercolor board here, or illustration board, sorry. But I think you get the idea what it is that we're getting here result-wise. What's next is this cadmium yellow deep. Okay, another. But basically, to do these, I've got 5 brushes that are just for these colors, and then basically there's one brush for each of the colors that we're mixing in. So basically, I've got 12 different brushes that I'm using here to conduct this experiment, but well, that's 12 beat up brushes here. And each of the sets comes with, well, 12 brushes. So, all right. And away we go. I'm just going to activate our cerulean blue here again. This might, I don't know, what I'm just interested, what kind of green exactly are we going to get here when these two sides join? Interesting. Now I'm going to get some of that liquid out of here. It's a little bit darker than I was expecting. Yeah, it was darker than I was expecting, for sure. And you have to remember about cerulean blue. And with watercolors, the term was always, it's a sedimentary color. So indigo is probably not going to look like this. So it's kind of choppy like this. Indigo probably won't really look that way. Mostly because, well, and I'm thinking too, ultramarine bluish and cobalt blue, that's the other thing. I guess what is just going to be interesting for you guys to see is how just the consistency of the colors are different. That's as much as seeing what the colors do as it is, that consistency. All right, here we go. Yellow ochre time. Oh, that's dark. Oh my goodness. This should yield a very forest type of green here, I'm thinking. Just move this across again. Now, cerulean blue time. Let's see what happens. I don't know, I may just have to not, as much as I like to have the dots of the original color already in place, They just tend to, whoops, it's a little bit too much there. That's one reason I try to do them before, because it's easy to get too much on here. All right, let's begin our mixing process. Okay. Look at how dark. Now I'm going to lighten this up just a pinch here. And that's basically what I'm seeing. You're pretty much seeing what I see. You can also see what's interesting, the way the ochre, now maybe it's just because we had more of this cerulean blue to work with. But you can see how dark that is, but very much kind of an olive green that happened here. So there's your cerulean blue. I believe we are working our way next towards cobalt blue. And that should be really interesting to see. We'll get to that one next. Let's get to our cobalt blue here. And like I said, now I'm just going to switch to making a dot and a dot. I'm not going to try and put the dots there in advance. We already have a brush going with white. We'll start moving this across here. Nice. Cobalt blue. Just want to make sure I've got all the, nothing sitting around in that brush. Just a pinch of my thinner to make sure that's going to flow. I haven't used this cobalt blue in a long time. This is what I really wanted to see. Got to get that white out of there. Cobalt blue, one of the main features of it though, unlike your cerulean blue, this is going to be shiny. It is going to have a little bit of shine. Cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, those have a wee bit of a shine to them. As long as you're aware to it, and we've already talked about, oops, sorry, there's already junk getting on me and on the stuff. Sorry about that. Well, we are going to have a swatch running through that anyways. Just trying to figure out where that paint came from so that it doesn't happen again. I'm also trying to avoid any kind of glare for you guys. So that it keeps its intensity, whereas I think some of the cerulean blue intensity was lost when the white got to it. So that's kind of a nice, I really do, cobalt blue is a neat color. It's just a little frustrating because it is very translucent. Yeah, see again, very much on the translucent side. It also has both linseed and safflower in it. Now we're going to find out what happens when our white hits it, or off-white yellow, sorry. Okay, almost ready to go. Set that brush off to the side. So this is still a little bit easier to make this one than it was with the the reds. I wasn't really sure exactly how I should approach it. So once I did that one, I think I had a little better idea of what I should do with this one. I do believe, I think the next one we might tackle after this would be something in the range, maybe purples or something like that. These were kind of the two most obvious ones, the reds and the blues. Now, actually, I'm going to get to the browns. I think you really need to see browns before the purples, maybe, because there's just so many of them. That brilliant yellow pale, I have to say, does do some interesting things with the colors that it mixes with. It's not necessarily a green. That could be an interesting sky color that's sort of wintry sky or whatever, and you want it to have that little bit of a greenish hint at the horizon, maybe sort of a fall on those grayer days. Nice, nice little mix. You can see it compared to what happens with our white. Next one up. And I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna put all the colors out there in advance like I have been. I'm just gonna do this one by one. I don't know if it's gonna actually take up that much more time because I don't have to screw around quite so much. Trying to rejuvenate the color. I am expecting on this one, expecting some intensity with this mix. I'll be surprised if I'm not expecting a phthalo green, but I do expect something on it's coming on the darker side for sure. I'm just gonna put the tiniest touch here of our thinner. That's all. Yeah, that's I can already see there is a bit of intensity to that green. Ooh, yeah. Definitely some intensity to that green. Taking away some of the paint so that it will mix with our yellow here reasonably. I'm going to go a touch more of the thinner. That might be a little too much. Did you see how that tears that away? This is the phenomenon that I talk about with the painting all the time on the miniatures, where you add a little bit of that thinner and it just kind of rips away like that. That is what I don't want to see happening on your miniature. Well, you don't want to see it happen on your miniatures. That's the kind of the, if that's why I'd say just kind of go with the dry bright. But that gives you a good idea. I might could take my finger and mix that too. Not really going to do that because if that stuff gets all over my finger, it's going to get all over every single one of these boards, and that's just not what I'm looking for. Cadmium yellow deep, maybe a bit more. Yeah, last time it took me one or two charts before I realized I should just keep these brushes aside in a place where they won't roll around, because who would have thought brushes that are round roll all over the place and get paint all over the place and all over each other. This is going to be, I'm what right here, what I anticipate, this is the kind of color I anticipated. This, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to get here. It may not be, like, it's not quite as intense of a green as I keep thinking phthalo blue. It's been so long since I last used cobalt blue. It's almost like I forgot what should happen when it hits something like the yellow. Okay. Well, that's really dark. That's really dark, and it almost looks brown. I was expecting, well, cobalt, a blue and a yellow to make a green. I'm almost getting like a brown there. That is, well, there is some red to make this more of an orange, basically. Pigment yellow 65, probably just more towards the red. We're seeing the red in there. Wow, that is not what I was expecting. This is definitely not what I was expecting here at all. There's green here, but that is much more of a kind of olive green than I was expecting. That's like a very drab olive green. I was not expecting that. It's more drab than what I was expecting. Wow. Yeah. It's like we're practically mixing an orange with the interesting. I'm sorry that I'm doing the crazy reaction like that. I just was not quite expecting that sort of a mix. Now this, I bet you might actually be, well, it's going to be pretty dark. I wonder what the green's going to look like compared to the green we just saw there. I mean, I'm just, pardon my curiosity here, but I just figured if I'm this curious about it, hopefully that kind of works its way over to you guys too. Yeah. Last mix here. Last mix for cobalt blue here. Expecting it to be dark. But this, I think this has less red in it, so what does that mean? Yeah, this, okay, this is actually more of a green, probably because they're just pigment yellow 43, so I'm guessing that the higher the yellow number, and this is just a guess, we could, I mean, 2 seconds on Google would probably tell you the answer, but I'm just assuming that the higher that yellow number is, the more red that you're having in your yellow. Okay, let's bring this over a little more here. And actually, I'm surprised at how quickly the yellow ochre dominated that, but that's kind of a grayish color right there. That's very much a gray. Yeah. So something like this, perhaps kind of a deep shadow color on an imperial fist if you've got a cool gray, whatever, concrete or asphalt or something like that. So there's your cobalt blue. What do we have up next here? I do believe it's ultramarine. Yes. Next up, we got ultramarine blue. So let's get to that one. Let's get to our cobalt blue here. And like I said, now I'm just going to switch to making a dot and a dot. I'm not going to try and put the dots there in advance. We already have a brush going with white. Let's start moving this across here. Nice. Cobalt blue. Just want to make sure I've got all the, nothing sitting around in that brush. Just a pinch of my thinner to make sure that's going to flow. I haven't used this cobalt blue in a long time. This is what I really wanted to see. Got to get that white out of there. Cobalt blue, one of the main features of it though, unlike your cerulean blue, this is going to be shiny. It is going to have a little bit of shine. Cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, those have a wee bit of a shine to them. As long as you're aware to it, and we've already talked about, oops, sorry, there's already junk getting on me and on the stuff. Sorry about that. Well, we are going to have a swatch running through that anyways. Just trying to figure out where that paint came from so that it doesn't happen again. I'm also trying to avoid any kind of glare for you guys. So that it keeps its intensity, whereas I think some of the cerulean blue intensity was lost when the white got to it. So that's kind of a nice. I really do. Cobalt blue is a neat color. It's just a little frustrating because it is very translucent. Yeah, see again, very much on the translucent side. It also has both linseed and safflower in it. Now we're going to find out what happens when our white hits it, or off-white yellow, sorry. Okay, almost ready to go. Set that brush off to the side. So this is still a little bit easier to make this one than it was with the reds. I wasn't really sure exactly how I should approach it. So once I did that one, I think I had a little better idea of what I should do with this one. I do believe, I think the next one we might tackle after this would be something in the range, maybe of purples or something like that. These were kind of the two most obvious ones, the reds and the blues. Now, actually, I'm going to get to the browns. I think you really need to see browns before the purples, maybe, because there's just so many of them. That brilliant yellow pale, I have to say, does do some interesting things with the colors that it mixes with. It's not necessarily a green. That could be an interesting sky color that's sort of wintry sky or whatever, and you want it to have that little bit of a greenish hint at the horizon, maybe sort of a fall on those grayer days. Nice, nice little mix. You can see it compared to what happens with our white. Next one up. And I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna put all the colors out there in advance like I have been. I'm just gonna do this one by one. I don't know if it's gonna actually take up that much more time because I don't have to screw around quite so much. Trying to rejuvenate the color. I am expecting, on this one, expecting some intensity with this mix. I'll be surprised if I'm not expecting a phthalo green, but I do expect something well, it's coming on the darker side for sure. I'm just gonna put the tiniest touch here of our thinner. That's all. Yeah, that's I can already see there is a bit of intensity to that green. Ooh, yeah, definitely some intensity to that green. Taking away some of the paint so that it will mix with our yellow here reasonably. I'm gonna go with a touch more of the thinner. That might be a little too much. Did you see how that tears that away? This is the phenomenon that I talk about with the painting all the time on the miniatures, where you add a little bit of that thinner and it just kind of rips away like that. That is what I don't want to see happening on your miniature. Well, you don't want to see it happen on your miniatures. That's the kind of the, if that's why I'd say just kind of go with the dry brush. But that gives you a good idea. I mean, I could take my finger and mix that too. Not really going to do that, because if that stuff gets all over my finger, it's going to get all over every single one of these boards, and that's just not what I'm looking for. Cadmium yellow deep, maybe a bit more. Yeah, last time it took me 1 or 2 charts before I realized I should just keep these brushes aside in a place where they won't roll around, because who would have thought brushes that are round roll all over the place and get paint all over the place and all over each other? This is going to be, I'm not, I'm, what, right here, what I anticipate, this is the kind of color I anticipated. This, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to get here. It may not be, like, it's not quite as intense of a green as I keep thinking phthalo blue. It's been so long since I last used cobalt blue. It's almost like I forgot what should happen when it hits something like the yellow. Okay, well, that's really dark. That's really dark, and it almost looks brown. I was expecting, well, cobalt, a blue and a yellow to make a green. I'm almost getting like a brown there. That is, well, there is some red to make this more of an orange, basically. Pigment yellow 65, probably just more towards the red. And we're seeing the red in there. Wow, that is not what I was expecting. This is definitely not what I was expecting here at all. There's green here, but that is much more of a kind of olive green than I was expecting. That's like a very drab olive green. I was not expecting that. It's more drab than what I was expecting. More, wow. Yeah. It's like we're practically mixing an orange with the interesting. I'm sorry that I'm doing the crazy reaction like that. I just was not quite expecting that sort of a mix. Now this, I bet you might actually be, well, it's going to be pretty dark. I wonder what the green's going to look like compared to the green we just saw there. I mean, I'm just, pardon my curiosity here, but I just figured if I'm this curious about it, hopefully that kind of works its way over to you guys too. Yeah. Last mix here. Last mix for cobalt blue here. Expecting it to be dark. But this, I think this has less red in it, so What does that mean? Yeah, this, okay, this is actually more of a green, probably because they're just pigment yellow 43. So I'm guessing that the higher the yellow number, and this is just a guess. We could, I mean, 2 seconds on Google would probably tell you the answer, but I'm just assuming that the higher that yellow number is, the just the more red that you're having in your yellow. Okay, let's bring this over a little more here. And actually, I'm surprised at how quickly the yellow ochre dominated that, but that's kind of a grayish color right there. That's very much a gray. Yeah. So something like this, perhaps kind of a deep shadow color on an imperial fist. If you've got a cool gray, whatever, concrete or asphalt or something like that. So there's your cobalt blue. What do we have up next here? I do believe it's ultramarine. Yes. Next up, we got ultramarine blue. So let's get to that one. Next up, we have ultramarine blue. And as you can see, translucent, really translucent. Also going to be, I do believe, more of a reddish color. That's most likely going to reveal itself even more once we get it to be hitting our white here. Take the titanium white. Get this over, a little over halfway here. And this is going to be another one of those colors that can be glossy. And man, is it translucent. I'll try to get this back on the palette. It has it. This in cobalt blue. Well, there's a bunch of colors that have just been missing from the palette for quite a while. It's not really intentional. It just kind of worked out that way. But you can see, well, that's interesting compared to what we got with our cobalt blue. Okay. Gotta keep cleaning this, cleaning the old brush here. The ultramarine blue that's got some potency to it. It's actually showing a bit more. Remember the phthalo green and what that did? And how it just kind of took over all colors. This ultramarine blue shows a little bit. I don't want to say it's like it's not going to be like the phthalo green, but this has some punch to it. Maybe that is, I was expecting this kind of punch in the cobalt blue, well, and especially the cobalt violet, and it just never really played out that way. And maybe I just got a little disappointed in it and just kind of stopped using it. And fortunately, ultramarine blue, that's not an expensive color. That is not an expensive color, not like the cobalts, which I find fascinating. Now let me see if I can grab that. So you see the differences there. This one is just a bit more on the greenish, and this one definitely almost more of a purple type. I know sometimes the camera doesn't quite pick that up. It's just, I wish it could. I've tried a lot of different things. That little subtle difference in blue, sometimes difficult to pick up. Where's my pale, brilliant yellow pale here? Now remember, the brilliant yellow pale has a tendency it's got a little kick to it. So now we have two colors that have a little bit of oomph to them. We shall see what happens when they meet in the middle. Just going to get the junk out of that brush there. And let's have at it. Letting that mix into the brush here. Yeah, so now here you have the our brilliant yellow pale. That's kind of fighting back a little bit. And now we'll let as much of the yellow work its way into this as we can. Okay, I am just going to use my finger there just to make sure that, because there was going to be too much of the blue working its way into that yellow. When you do a project like this, you're just going to have a lot of paper towels on hand. So there we go. Yeah, I'm going to a little bit more of the yellow and blue mixed together here. Okay. Row 3. What to expect from our faux cadmium yellow. Obviously some kind of a relatively deep green here. Because of the reddishness now of the ultramarine blue, that might have, it might cause it to almost turn more of a brownish color. Remember what happened with the cadmium yellow deep there? And it almost turned the color way more brownish than I was expecting as far as my green. So that could potentially also happen here. One never knows until you try, though, and that's what we're going to do right now. I had a little too much of the ultramarine blue out there. I'm trying to avoid having too much of a stack over here because, well, it's not like we're thinning it down like the miniature oil paints. And it takes a little while to dry because I like to have these on hand for showing on other videos or the Twitch sessions or something. Now this is not what I expected. This is actually what I thought was going to happen more with the cobalt blue and cerulean blue. That's a little bit more of a, that's more of the green that I was expecting from those other colors. But I'm getting it with this. So much for that prediction. This, not really what I anticipated. Live and learn. That's why we do these things. That is why we do this, so we can actually see. You can theorize all you want. Just like with dice, you can say, well, it's this percentage of this, that, and the other. And then there's just, well, okay, roll me the dice. And let's see what happens. Let's not think about what's going to happen. Let's see what happens. Now we see now. Yeah, that is a, I almost, you could transpose what happened with this one and with some of the previous colors. And I would have said, all right, yeah, I could see that. This, completely different, however. Which, I mean, again, it's not a bad thing that something different happened from what I was expecting. And hopefully that makes you, because I know when I'm doing, say, the 3D printing or something that I'm not familiar with, and I just try this, well, okay, I think this is what should happen, and something weird, totally the opposite happens, and I say, okay, I did something wrong. I did something wrong. I must have screwed up. I must have, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not familiar enough with this. And sometimes, no, it's just, you, you just can't always predict what's going to happen. You can theorize and make good assumptions, but they're only theories and assumptions until you try the stuff. Which now leaves me really intrigued at what's going to happen here when these two meet. So we're just about there. Curious to see what the intensity level is going to be. It's going to be dark. It is dark, but again, the intensity level, as far as the kind of green that I'm getting, so this is I don't want to say frustrating, but boy, the ultramarine blue. If you're telling me, okay, which based on so far what you've done of these two blues, ultramarine or cobalt, which do you think is more likely to make an appearance on the palette sooner? Ultramarine blue is going to be the first one. So you notice I haven't really recommended getting stuff like cobalt blue at all when people are asking, all right, after the starter set, what do you fill it out with? And I have really not recommended cobalt blue. For now, it's still kind of staying on that. It's kind of on the, well, I don't really know if you need it list. It's not like don't get it, but for its cost, I don't know. If it costs the same as ultramarine blue, that'd be different. But there's a reason why ultramarine blue comes in starter sets and cobalt blue does not. There might be cobalt blue hue or something like that, but again, that is an imitation cobalt color. That's not the real thing. Which now has me curious as to what's going to happen here. Where's my, there it is. Have I cleaned that? Yes, that has been cleaned sufficiently. Ultramarine blue, what are you gonna do? So in effect, and this is what I was hoping for, that this would be almost a double tutorial, that it wouldn't just be about blue, it would, or yellow, it would be about greens. And we're certainly learning a lot about greens and what these different blues can make. And okay, we just get more and more of the more and more of that yellow ochre in there. And as you would expect, that's going to be a dingier green. Really dark. These obviously, these two greens are my favorite. These are the ones I'm going to most want to see. This is just, it's almost more palette sludge right here. So, okay, that's what you're going to get at ultramarine blue, and you can really see how reddish that is. What's our next one going to be? Well, now this is this should be fun. Phthalo blue, probably it's got to be the most intense of all the blues that we have tried so far. So we are going to do this one next, and it is the Williamsburg Phthalo blue. As we get into our phthalo blue, I did want to show you something here. So this is your Winton. That's the student grade stuff, right? And here's our Williamsburg. Look at the pigment number. So here you see pigment blue 15, and that is pigment blue 15.3. And as I look at these two, this one looks more green, this one looks a little bit more bluish. So maybe I'll try another set later on with the, remember we did the comparison to the cadmium green, or the cadmium red deep to the cadmium red deep of Gamelin, the real one, so the faux versus the real. Okay, and we'll just draw this right across. It's our titanium white. And let's see what happens when phthalo blue hits that. Phthalo blue is, again, another one of those translucent colors. It doesn't have that nifty little symbol on it like the container of Winsor Newton does. And now you're going to see, this is why I've been using this for the sky, earth. Now you see why I've been using that for sky, earth. Look at what just happened right there. I'm just going to clean up my finger here, because if I don't, we're going to get this stuff all over our chart here. Yeah, this is, now you see why phthalo blue has been out on the palette a whole lot. A lot. Is it perfect for everything? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. However, I don't know. To me, it just I can do more with this, and I'm also gonna be more familiar with what happens when the yellows hit it, because we have used this an awful lot, especially of late. And this is also too experience, right? The more you use something, the more you know what to expect. Well, the ultramarine, the cobalt, it's been so long since I last used them, I don't even know what the heck to expect out of them. But this, well, that's exactly what I expected, because I was just using that mix within the last 24 hours. So that was fun. Let's try it again. And you saw that the phthalo blue really hit that titanium white. Now we've got two that are potentially some strong colors as well. That pale, that brilliant yellow pale. Time for that to mix with our phthalo blue here. Let's get that brush cleaned as well as we can. I'm just using my thinner at this point. Time for phthalo blue, and we shall see what happens. How green is this going to get? Because this is not a combination that I've used as much. I've used the white with it a lot. So not super green, like at all. Well, it's changing a little bit now. This is an interesting color. It's kind of almost like a seafoam green here, where it's not, it doesn't have like a greenish hint, but just a touch, like a sea green blue. So phthalo blue, without a doubt. There's a reason why you're seeing this a lot on my palette versus the other ones. I don't know, to me, there's a little more utility in it. I think I can do more with this. Certainly than the cobalt blue, which, again, a wee bit on the disappointing side, because, well, those cobalts don't come cheap. Now, it's not like I'll never use those again, but I like what I see. I'm liking what I see from this. Just want to make sure I don't have any kind of phthalo blue left in that. And you've definitely seen me use this. This is why I'm saying I'm not quite sure I really never need to have the cadmium green light, because I think that's what we're going to make here. I have a suspicion that is what we are going to make. So cadmium yellow light, well, faux cadmium yellow light. And now phthalo blue works its way across. Now you know why when I mix this with that interference color, because it's just so intense. Okay. Ooh, yeah. Very nice. That's giving me the intensity that I would really hope to actually be seeing here. But much like the phthalo green, this is one of those staining colors. Look at this. I'm just gonna have to have a whole new brush here. I'm gonna have to have a whole new brush. I can't get the phthalo out of it. I have to actually have another brush here. So that is a nice intense green over there. Yeah, liking that. I took a bunch of brushes to get there. That speaks to the the potency of that phthalo blue as opposed to all the other blues that we've used so far. Even though they look, they kind of seem like they have a little kick to it, especially when they mix with the white. But now, let's see what happens with our cadmium yellow. We won't quite need that much, so we're just gonna put this off to the side here. We don't need that much. How deep will this grain be? Won't know until we have these two blending together. Oh, what the heck? I'm going to have a little bit of my thinner in this. I suspect a very deep, intense grain's going to happen here. This is a mix I haven't made very much. Is this with the cadmium yellow. So again, we're going to take some of that out of the brush because it's already starting to overpower that yellow. See, even here, it's just a little less dingy. And you don't it doesn't always have to be, and not every blue-yellow mix has to give you this brilliant green. Far from it. However, when you want something like that, you'd like to know, okay, where am I gonna get that from? But that phthalo it's got that extra kick. We got to get that. There's too much thinner in that brush. I could see it starting to tear the paint away already. right? Yeah, look at this. Interesting. Last one. Yellow ochre. Mixing with our phthalo blue. Now, I guess too, is the phthalo blue, am I enjoying those results more because I'm just getting what I expect? Or is it just because they're results that I can just utilize more? What is it? First impressions, right? But remember what happened with the reds? There were some colors that just made a re-entry onto the palette because of what I saw them do when we were making all the swatches. Last one of our phthalo here, and then I think we'll just hit our Payne's gray and indigo because that's a real comparison type of color there. I think too the Holbein stuff, just because of its expense, and I know some folks for overseas and stuff that is actually it's easier for them to get that. I have to. It takes a lot of the paint to be able to do these. That's why we're pretty much out of our faux cadmium yellow light of the Williamsburg. It's not because I've been using it for painting. It's because I've been using it for color charts. Now, even this, yeah, even this green that I get here, I like that a little bit better. Just gonna grab a little more of the actual just yellow ochre here. So all around, to me, I can get more use out of these, at least initially, just off the top of my head here. So what's our next one going to be here? It's gonna be indigo. Uh-huh. Indigo next. Really dark colors coming up. So let's do that one next. We move into our darkest colors here with the indigo blue. And I'm just looking at so you got pigment blue 15. Where did we see that before? That was in our phthalo blue. Now we see the pigment black, darkens it down, but then you have a pigment blue 29. And I'm just gonna, oh, okay, check this out. So basically it's black, it's ultramarine blue, and phthalo blue. What are the two? Well, phthalo blue, right? We like. The ultramarine blue we sort of liked better, and you just throw a little black in there. So you could, in theory, make indigo blue that way. And I know there's some folks that are really into the pigment numbers. Just something to ponder. Something to ponder there. That's interesting. So it's basically phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, and some amount of black. And I can see now why. That's why it's also much more of a translucent color than you might think it would be. All right, indigo. I mean, you've seen me use this one often enough, especially as a pre-glaze. It hits our blue, and it makes that lovely, almost kind of bluish steel gray. All right. Yeah, that's an interesting find right there. I guess I try not to. I don't really look at the numbers all that much just because I don't want to be. Well, you saw how I have my assumptions already about things, and I try not to just have the assumptions, but well, we've used this one enough. We've certainly used indigo blue enough that seeing that now kind of backs up what we've seen IRL in real life. Next up, the brilliant yellow pale. What are we going to see here? I guess I need some more. That's why indigo, but we talk about indigo sort of being a staining color for those pre-glazes. Well, that's the phthalo in it. That would be the phthalo in it. All right, good to know. Good to know. Well, as long as I can remember. Hopefully I remember that. And I don't even know what got me to just look at the pigment numbers. I'm not quite sure why I did that. I just said, oh, we'll just have some fun, look at the pigment numbers. And I went, pigment 15? Where did I see that before? Wait a minute. The other pigment blue that I recognize because we just looked at it. And this I've seen before too. It's interesting how there's just not a huge difference really when you think about between that yellow and the white. Not a super big difference there. Just getting that brush cleaned out because I would like to see what happens here on this end of the spectrum here of our mix. Kind of on the summer, that's just that's why I like the indigo blue as kind of a steel color. Now I'm pretty sure we have done this mix before of the cadmium yellow and the indigo. Cadmium yellow light. Spread this across. There. Let's do our indigo across and meet it in the middle and see what we get. Already starting to turn kind of an interesting green there. I know at this point, not super obvious on camera. But it should make its presence felt now. Sure is. Okay, a little more of our yellow here. Then we just try and clean this out as best as I can here. Because I'd like to Yeah, I was hoping to get a better mix right along here. Yeah, I do enjoy that green too. Yeah, I like that. What's up next? Our cadmium yellow deep. I don't know how much I've done of this. Mixing this with the indigo, just straight on to mix the two. I'm not quite sure how much of that I've done. Which once again leaves me intrigued at the possibilities. I am just going to take, there's a little bit more here than I need. I'm just going to deposit some of that over there. Quite need that much of the phthalo blue. I'm just, well, it's a Freudian slip there. Got to take some of this out of here. It's starting to do the green here. Actually, well, now I shouldn't be surprised that this is not quite as not well dingy. I hate using that word, but I think because of that phthalo blue that's in there, well, even the ultramarine blue. Again, that's where we just got too much of the thinner, which means we've got to grab some of the paint here again. And I know I've actually got some little supply of the yellow off to the side here that I can use. All right, so that was a fun little mix right there. Let's do our last one now with the yellow ochre. We'll throw a touch more of the phthalo blue out there. Indigo blue. Man, that's just that's gonna happen a lot, I guess. That's just gonna be on my mind now. Get that circulated all the way over to here. And yeah, I'm gonna just throw a little bit of my thinner. I just gotta get my hands a little bit cleaner here. Sorry for a little bit of a delay, but it's gonna get all over that card there, and I don't want it to affect any of the results. And away we go. And as I see this mixing here, I'm just visualizing what could this be for right here? The mix that I'm starting to see play out in front of me here. What could that be used for? Aside from obvious things like maybe some kind of uniform colors or whatever. Maybe something for darker colors on tree bark or whatever. And now you know why there's just so many ways to make green. There's a lot of ways to make green. So there's your indigo blue slash ultramarine black and phthalo blue in disguise. So they work together to create indigo. Who'd have thought it? Now we're going to move on to our last one, and that's going to be Payne's Gray. We'll do that next. So last up, we've got our Payne's Gray, and just because we did it with our indigo, I flipped it around this way, and the only thing that really had just similarity that popped out of my head right was this. Look at this, Pigment Blue 28, Pigment Blue 29. You can also see a similar light fastness here, but this one only has linseed oil. This has linseed oil and safflower oil. So like I said, make of it what you will. The black pigment's different. There's a lot of things that are different about the Payne's Gray, but just it seems like it's somewhat closer to cobalt blue, whereas your indigo blue seems to have a relationship to ultramarine blue. Okay. Now I'm going to be curious to hear too, because I thought at least lately I've been thinking that the indigo is more opaque than the Payne's Gray, but according to that little label there, it says this is more opaque. I guess we'll find out if it really, really is. Wow, that got punched in the face by the white really fast. That is maybe it's just been a while since I used it. Nah, it's not necessarily a huge surprise, but wow. But I like this color that it's creating here. I do like that. I do like what's happening here. So we'll have to get Payne's Gray back out here again. I think if we do some black space marine or just black armor in general, I think we'll break out the Payne's Gray and maybe just leave the indigo. We'll leave the indigo off to the side and just do Payne's Gray. Because now folks have it and they've been asking about it. And well, at least you get to see it in action here. So this is it's not one I've actually had it out on the palette for me just doing my stuff, not in videos or in sessions on Twitch. So it has been out on the palette. It's not forgotten. Is this my... Aha. So that's very much more along the lines of a reddish, as expected. I mean, you could just kind of tell looking at, I know the little stupid color thing on the, here doesn't really indicate the best, but now this is a mix I've never seen because we didn't have this color pretty much the last time I was using the Payne's Gray. And now I want to see. I have to see what happens here. But the indigo, because there's phthalo blue in it, that's, I think, why it's able to kind of hold its own when some of these other colors go in, whereas the Payne's Gray just got pushed aside by the white there. Now once again, I'm gonna get some of this stuff off of my fingers here. And we begin with our Payne's Gray. And it just doesn't take long before that yellow starts taking over. I'm just intrigued. Totally intrigued by that. I just want to see. Okay, I'm going to take it this way. Wow, that just did. That gets taken over so quickly. This might be one of the reasons why. Well, how many times have you heard me say how kind of impressive that indigo is as far as how it interacts with the other colors? Well, Payne's gray just sort of gets, I don't want to say beat up by the other colors. The other colors are bullies on it, but wow. All right. Our faux cadmium yellow now. And do we get any kind of a green out of this, or does it just end up being much more gray? As always, there is but one way to tell. All right, we got our Payne's gray lined up in here. I'm getting a nice green here actually. One that I like. I like what I'm seeing here. Yeah. Nifty. Nice green. Yeah. That works for me. Really do enjoy that green. Just want to see if I can get a bit tidier of a mix at the end. Bang. There we go. All right. Now, cadmium yellow deep. What is going to happen? It's like opening lots and lots of Christmas presents. Just don't know what's going to happen. And then we'll have our yellow ochre. That'll be our last one. And again, as much as I'd like to play around with that last blue, the Holbein stuff, I think I might save that for another time because there's other stuff that's coming here as well. I have other colors on the way, and I think it's just best to save them to do along with some of those other ones. Okay, we begin our mix. And that really did, look at that. I have to say this, that Payne's gray, it's kind of a nice smooth color, whereas stuff like the cerulean blue was really choppy there because it is it's more of a sedimentary color. All right. So we have our green there. And now it's time for some yellow ochre. Right here. Our last color mix. Even they're semi-trans. Surprised at that. Grab our yellow ochre brush here. thought the yellow ochre wouldn't, no. Yeah, I guess I could see it being on the semi-translucent side. Payne's gray. Payne's gray and yellow ochre. Even more greenish than I expected, given the thing of, okay, thinking of this as being more of a reddish blue because of the cobalt blue in it. But notice that the yellow ochre doesn't have the impact. The Payne's gray really kind of stands up to the yellow ochre here. I think all of the other colors pretty much did the same thing. Payne's gray. Let's do a quick little comparison of that to our indigo. So Payne's gray here, indigo here. So I mean it's pretty clear straight away. Yeah. So that's it right there. That's in if you're looking for that more of a burnished steel. So if you're looking for more of the sky earth kind of shiny steel, maybe indigo blue. But if you're looking for that burnished steel, Payne's gray might just be the thing for you. So I hope these are helpful. I will try to keep making these. I actually bought more of these cards here so I can keep doing more of this. This is just Crescent, again, hot press illustration board. I also got more of these so I can maybe do just some paintings on them or something like that too. But I hope this is helpful. We will continue with this. I would like to try. There's a whole heap of browns and everything, burnt siennas. Like this is a color I haven't had on the palette in forever, right? Here's another color that hasn't been out on. Is this raw sienna here? Yeah, raw sienna is another one. So there's a bunch of those that I wanna try, and maybe even stuff like a ivory black because well, I'm looking at what's in here. Pigment black 9. Oh, that's 19. Okay, I thought maybe that was in here. So I just want to compare some other colors to it. Just get into the browns and see what we can do with those. But as always, thanks again for your support on every pledge level. And I do hope that these make it a little bit easier for you to sort of take that dive into the oils. And we'll catch you on the next Color Theory and Oils.